Hi everyone, good to be here and thanks for taking the time. We'll talk about AI today and how it can help with doing deeper research, not just faster research. And speed is naturally something that gets talked about when we talk about AI. It can do things faster, it can automate. But I think the core value of AI is actually that it's like a creative platform. It gives us superpowers. If I did not know about something, I can ask questions with a specific context of what am I looking for, why am I looking for, and I can get a very custom answer back. I can learn much faster through that process. Similarly, when I'm analyzing data, it can do things that enable me to go deeper into the surface and gain much richer insights. And that's kind of what we want to talk about today. So that ties into this concept of a 10x researcher. I think AI can really help us do 10x of what we do today because it understands a lot of what we are trying to do. And I say understand in sort of very loose terms because AI fundamentally in today's term, it's a mathematical way to understand data. So it doesn't equate to the same level of understanding that a human being would have. But if I talk to it in my own terms, it can respond to me in the terms that I would understand as well. And I think that back and forth is really powerful, and that collective capability can allow us to do a lot more. My name is Alok. I've been in the research and design field for a little over 30 years at this point. Last 10 years I've spent in applying artificial intelligence in various capacities. And then I'm also the founder of a tool called DoReveal, which uses AI to synthesize qualitative research. So we'll not talk about the tool today, but a lot of the things that we are learning about as we are discovering, as we are thinking about the tool, is what I want to share with you today. Cool. Uh, there are several different ways that AI can help us go deeper. One of the key areas I think is frameworks and methods. And honestly, I've never had any formal education in the research myself. So over the last 30 years, a lot of my exploration has been by doing things and then also looking at what is it that great researchers do. How are they able to get to deeper insights or better or more relevant insights when they do their work? And I think one of the key areas within that is this idea of frameworks or methods or other ways to apply this very systematic thinking and mindset. So I'm using these terms very loosely, but I'm referring to areas like grounded theory or jobs to be done or journey map. I'm sure most of us, if not all of us, would have already applied some of these in our work. Right? And I think that really offers a great opportunity when we start to think about AI also. By the way, this QR code on the right side top is links to a blog article that I'd written on the topic. So if you're interested, it goes through some of these frameworks in a lot of detail. So yeah, so if you're interested, please feel free to visit. Cool. One way to think about these frameworks is they are a way for us to direct our attention onto something. When we are working with research data, that research data has a lot of different kind of observations that we can draw from it, insights that we can draw from it. So, where do we want to focus is where I think frameworks start to help us drive more attention, right? To give you a few examples, let's say if I was to use jobs to be done, my attention starts to move towards the goals of the users. Why are they doing this? What is it? What needs? What job are they hiring my product or service to do? Right. If we talk about journey map, there is a very interesting time element that comes into journey map. It's not just a static observation; it is a relative observation to say something happened and something else happened and something else happened, and you can start to get a feel of that journey for the user, and look at it in collective terms and not just in isolated terms. Laddering exercises like emotional laddering, they focus more on the why behind why are people doing this, what is their motivation, what are the values that are driving people's behaviors, and similarly personas, thematic analysis, and other forms also, right? So these are the different kinds of areas where attention can be directed. Another way to think about frameworks is that we have this span of data in front of us, and by using different frameworks, we can start to bring some of that information into foreground and some of that information then goes into the background, right? And it's not binary. It's not like, okay, you're just looking for that perfect thing to come into foreground. You're basically zooming in and out to figure out what really is useful. uh, One of the really useful metaphors that I have found for research is that of a metal detector. It's basically like you're using a metal detector to find some treasure, and you start to scan the surface, and somewhere you find something interesting. You go, it goes beep beep beep, and you sort of dig and you go deeper to see if you found treasure or not. But then you sort of come back to the surface again. You start to scan, and then again the same process going on, right? So you're sort of zooming in and out, and you're starting to bring some of that insight, some of those observations into foreground, and that gives you the raw material as a researcher to be able to then make determinations, right? So that's the lens through which I'm looking at these frameworks. Let's take an example. Let's say we were talking about a food delivery application, and one of the participants said something like this, right? That they are ordering takeout after work when they feel exhausted. And even though it is more expensive, they feel it makes their life easier and they sort of justify that. As we are analyzing these kind of comments, we can start to extract out insights that yes, that being tired has a role to play in the user's decision. Convenience matters in this context, and then some perspective towards price sensitivity. Are people sensitive or not? And in this case, they do recognize that it's expensive, but they're able to justify it because it feels easier to use a food delivery application. Right. So that's a broader thematic sort of a summarization that starts to come together. Now let's apply a framework to it. Let's start with journey map. When I look at journey map, then the trigger for that journey becomes that okay, at the end of the day, I'm tired. And I don't really want to cook myself for various reasons. So I start looking at this application to find options for food. Maybe this application has lots of different options, which then start to overwhelm them, which start to confuse them. But I'm able to parse through those, actually make an order, which gives me a feeling of relief that okay, now this is done. But at the same time, maybe there is a lingering guilt that I have that it is expensive. I'm spending more on this. Am I being really financially savvy or not? Right. So the moment we bring journey map, there is a different sort of a perspective that starts to shape up on top of what we already observe. And amongst other things, we are seeing this emotional arc from feeling very fatigued to feeling overwhelmed with the choices to feeling a relief for ordering, and then maybe a little bit of guilt for spending more than what we might want to. Let's apply another framework. Let's apply jobs to be done. And let's say we want to look at two different kinds of jobs, the functional job and the emotional job. The functional job here is that okay, I need access to dinner without putting in a lot of different without putting a lot of effort so that I can recover, right? Emotional job takes it a step further, where maybe I want to feel being taken care of because I don't have the energy at the end of the day, right? So as we apply this lens of jobs to be done, why are people doing it? It starts to bring in a slightly different perspective into it, right? It's not just about the functional elements that we went through with the journey map. It's also about this idea that I want to feel being taken care of, and it's about restoration and things like that. Let's try one more example with laddering exercise, where we are going through what people said or did and then moving towards a why. So, why is it easier to order with a food ordering app? Because cooking might feel cumbersome. It might feel there's a lot of decisions I have to make, what to cook, where are the ingredients, etc. I also might not have the energy. I'm feeling overloaded already, uh, things like that. And all of that might come together into this idea that okay, I don't want to feel behind at my work. I want to be able to take care of this side of it so that I can focus on my work and I can achieve what I wanted to, right? And it starts to touch on this idea of identity perception, of how is it that I see myself in that context. And some of those kind of insights might start to surface. Uh, Now, I'm not suggesting that this is the only way to look at this data, and every the diversity of thought I think is going to be good, where you can look at it and say, no, no, I actually see something else here, and I think that's good. So it's not meant to be this black and white. Okay, this is exactly the only thing that you should gather out of it, but this is really just to show you an example that as we apply different frameworks, it almost forces us to start looking at things in different ways. And the same idea that you're getting some information in the foreground, some information moves to the background, you start to focus your attention on different areas. And I think that kind of an exercise starts to bring more depth into our analysis. And it doesn't have to be just about different frameworks. It can also be that within the same kind of a method or a framework, let's say I'm trying to build personas. I could say that what if I looked at it from a perspective of behaviors? Can I cluster these behaviors into a unified persona? In marketing, we do a lot of demographic personas also. What if I did demographically? Or what if I looked at people's motivations and goal and cluster based on that? So again, within the same sort of a piece, you can start to say, what if I did this, that, and something else? And that starts to give me these signals, and I might start to combine them to say, okay, yeah, this part of goal oriented and this part of behavioral is really what matters based on the context of this study, based on my goals. And I want to put it together, and that's what's going to lead to the personas. Right. So that richness that is coming through this back and forth is what I wanted to emphasize on. Now, the challenge in all of this boils down to these kind of things. To be able to do each of these things, I need to have the right kind of skills. I need to have the right kind of depth. I've seen so many places where jobs to be done is just done very wrong. So there is a certain level of depth and skill that's needed to be able to do these things well. Naturally, time is a constraint because if I want to try each of these things separately, everything is going to take an amount of time which I might not have in a typical project. And that directly ties into money also. The amount of money that's invested for the study might not allow me to put in that kind of a time and energy and resources towards each of these. So that's where I think AI can come in and help solve each of these areas. So let's look at a few examples. But before I go there, actually, the foundational piece you will see is that with the current models that are out there, and I've taken an example of ChatGPT and Claude here, but the same is true with Gemini, Google Gemini, and Grok, and others also. Their training data actually includes information about these frameworks. Now, the level of depth that they're trained on is not clearly known because it's black box. It's not published anywhere. But if you were to just go in and ask a question to any of these, and I've included these two as an example here, uh, they are familiar with these frameworks, which means you're not starting at point zero. Which also means that you can go in and tell these large language model that, hey, I want to do an IPA based analysis, and it will understand what IPA really means, and it can give you a better starting point. You don't have to train it into what IPA at a fundamental level means. So yeah, so let's look at a few examples. There are a few different ways. So we talked about skill, time, and money. Let's start from a skill sort of a standpoint. Here I've just gone into ChatGPT, and let's say you want to do sentiment analysis, and you're not sure, is there something established out there that I can use to do a good job of it? So here I've given it a very simple prompt to say I want to do a very nuanced sentiment analysis on top of Qualitative. Are there any established frameworks that I can use to help me provide deeper and accurate insights? And it comes back with a suggestion to say, yes, you could combine thematic and sentiment. So you could say, generate these themes for me, and then tie sentiments to that. And then based on that, I could do the analysis. You can also do sort of discourse and narrative focus methods, etc. And you might have questions about these to say what these are, and you can ask that as a follow up question and learn about these. So here it has come back with several different frameworks that I could potentially use to achieve my goal. Right. Let's say you pick up a framework. In this example, I've taken that, okay, you are interested in doing personal construct psychology principles, Kelly's principles. And let's say you've never done that. you can come in and say, okay, how can I apply this into my call research? And the large language model comes back and explains to me what it is and how it gets applied. And I can go through and learn very quickly, at least the basics of how this comes together. Not only that, I can actually say that, okay, hey, I want to use this with AI. Can you generate an AI prompt for me? So I can do this analysis. So it gives you a starting point to actually have a prompt for this very technique, which you can use in your own analysis as well. So here it has generated a prompt for me. Cool. So from a skill standpoint, you're able to ask questions like, okay, what framework should I use? How does it work? Even get this kind of a prompt and move forward with that. Now let's start to apply these frameworks. So here I have a few different chats created. The first chat I have, this study is about COVID-19. There are about 10 or 12 different interviews in it. And I am just applying different frameworks to analyze this data here. The first prompt I have is to say, analyze the study using the personal construct psychology principle, the Kelly's principles that I was just referring to in ChatGPT. And that's really the core of my prompt here. Everything else is really explaining how do I want the output to be. So it's a lot more specific to what I was looking for. But at a core level, I'm able to ask this question in these simple terms to say, analyze this data using personal construct psychology principles. And because large language models have been trained on this, it is able to look through the 10 or 12 different transcripts that I have in this case, and it is able to provide me different ladders because there's a laddering exercise. And to give you an example, what it's showing is this is what people have expressed in their interviews. So they talked about stockpiling masks, they talk about building backup staffing plans, etc. And then AI is doing the projection to say, uh, by expressing these, what is it that they are trying to say? They want to get ahead of the curve, they want to have situational awareness, which then ties into a bigger why of protecting their staff and patients, their own competence, stewardship, etc. So, this is what AI has generated for me. Again, is it really the best answer? Is it the only answer? It definitely is not the only answer. That's where the human judgment comes in. But it is able to understand and provide relevant information to me. And now, as a researcher, I can start to decide what do I want to do with it. Similarly, it has generated other ladders also for me. And then I can ask follow up questions and I can say, hey, let's take that first ladder, stockpiling PPE, etc., and let's explore it a little more. What are the other whys that we can extract out of it? And then it looks at it and it provides me more information on that side. It's about operational competence, institutional reliability, etc. So I can go back and forth now and have a conversation at the level of my inquiry as opposed to trying to explain how the framework works, etc. Right. So that's one way I was able to do laddering. Here is another one. This is another method, means and chain, to do same kind of thing where I'm trying to get to the values that are driving people's what they have expressed, the attributes that they have expressed in the interview, and through a similar kind of a prompt, now I have this information. There was conversation around mask shortages and improvisation that people did, and that ties into the broader idea of keeping everybody safe, being prepared. There was conversation about hoarding of masks and inequitable allocation, which gets into the question of fairness and trust, etc. So now I'm getting a slightly different slice from the same data because I'm trying to apply a different way of doing laddering over here. Right. And this whole process would have taken maybe a few seconds to maybe a couple of minutes for AI to generate this data for me, and then I can use it. Next, I have an example of behavioral personas, same structure. My prompt here fundamentally is create behavioral personas. And I'm giving a little more detail in how I want it to be clustered. I want 2 to 4 personas, etc. But the core framework, I'm just saying use create behavioral persona, and AI understands that. So it has come back with these personas: system sentinel, kind of a person, prep and train operator, pragmatic fixer, people like that. And then, like I shared before, I could try different kinds of personas. I could say, okay, what about goal oriented persona? So my prompt says, okay, create goal oriented persona based on this study, based on Alan Cooper's method. And it knows what Alan Cooper's method is. So it generates those for me: preparedness coordinator, improvising responder, standards and safety defender, and so on. Right now, I can put these personas together and say, yeah, you know what? Actually, the preparedness coordinator came in the other one also, and here also, maybe that's a stronger signal, and I can dive deeper into that and get more information on that front. This one is an example of journey map. I asked it to create a journey map based on interview data. I gave it the stages, etc., and it has generated those to say, okay, here are all the stages of my journey map: early awareness, deployment of EMT work, etc. And then for each of those, I've asked it to capture what actions, what touch points, what mindsets, what emotions were discussed in the interviews. Now, in these cases, I've taken the each of the framework as a separate thing, but I can also combine them. So in this particular chat, I first asked it to do themes and then identify sentiments associated with those themes. So it has identified the broad themes, it has identified the emotional tones associated with them. I got the second theme here and so on. So I got multiple themes identified here. And then I asked it to cluster people based on these themes, based on the sentiments that were expressed, and then generate personas for me. So now I get a different set of personas, but it is based on a different framework that was applied. So I did thematic analysis. Now I'm doing personas on top of it to say the prepared team player, let's see, disillusioned realist, etc. And then next, I picked up one of these personas. So I said, okay, if you can pick up, let's say, persona number one, the prepared team player, and generate a journey map for that specific persona. So I'm getting very specific, very rich output through that process. And then at a fundamental level, what's changing is that I am able to follow my natural chain of thought and just interact with AI to say, give me this. Oh, no, what about this? I can validate my hypotheses this way. I could ask deeper questions and I can start to delve more and more into my data. And that's where I think the power of AI starts to come in, especially in enabling all of us to be able to do deeper research. To highlight a few points, I think one of the strongest message here is around diversity of thought. That because AI understands all these frameworks, etc., you can actually have a conversation with them as if you're talking to a colleague. So suddenly you have access to a few different colleagues and you can have this diversity of thought. You can challenge your own biases, you can get more ideas, and that helps go deeper into the research process. The way you're able to interrogate the data, the way you're able to naturally follow your instincts, that also leads to greater richness. One of the areas we did not talk about was around domain understanding. These large language models have knowledge around certain domains like healthcare and financial industry, which have their own terminology and acronyms, etc., which all of us may not be familiar with. But through this process, we can also use those and get better understanding of that. When a respondent has mentioned something, the AI can use that, understand that knowledge that they have in their training data set around these domains, and bring that also into the analysis process. So that at a high level are some of my thoughts. Hopefully that was useful for you. All the prompts that I have included here are available on this page. You can scan the QR code. They are free for you to use. You don't have to use my tool for it. Go and use it in ChatGPT, Claude, any other tool that you like. It is yours. And then before I go, I also wanted to thank a few people. These are people who have actively or passively just somewhere influenced my thinking through their presentations, through direct conversations. So I just wanted to thank Janet, Tom, and Jason. They were very helpful in shaping my thinking around using such frameworks in the analysis process. And with that, yeah, thank you to all of you as well. I am happy to answer any questions and also curious to hear what your thoughts are.